Hey, this is John Lee Dumas, the founder and host of Entrepreneurs on Fire. And if you're wanting to learn how to embrace change and navigate through disruption as a leader, then listen to the Leadership is Changing podcast with my good friend, Dennis Giannoutsis. He's prepared to ignite.
Welcome to Leadership is Changing. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change. This is taking your leadership to another level by finding the balance between executive excellence and personal well-being through stories that inspire real change. It's time to adapt in our fast-moving world when leadership is changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsis.
Tell me more about your background if you'd like to share anything else, but in particular, tell us a little bit more about the DJ lessons.
Music was a huge part of my life growing up, and trust me, if I could have that as my career, or at least my second career, that's something I'm looking forward to. I'm a fourth generation Idahoan here in the United States, came from a middle-class background, spent a lot of my youth growing up singing, playing music, playing sports, keeping busy, and came from a family of educators where global and lifelong learning is kind of part of everyday life. Was fortunate to live abroad at a young age in Denmark as an exchange student, and that really shaped my trajectory about things I was interested in. And actually, after I went to university, joined HP, and have had new roles all over the company, all over the world, whether that was global business side, doing R&D and product portfolio, or out in front of customers in the US or in Asia or in Europe, talking about PCs and printers. And so I feel fortunate to be a global citizen and having had an opportunity to look across the company end to end from many different roles.
Yeah, impressive. And your background is very impressive and what you do and what you've done. So how did you get into leadership?
For me, it started back with sports, quite frankly. I played basketball and soccer growing up. I was not the superstar up and down, but I was consistent. And what I loved about sports was there were playbooks. Things always changed. You had different teams you were playing. You may or may not get playing time. It was always a unique combination of skills depending on the year or the time, and spending a lot of time winning and losing and learning those different sides of things really shaped, I think, who I was then and what I wanted to become. I took steps in student leadership and other things over the years. Coached then as I coached sports, especially basketball, for, 20, 25 years on the side next to work. But so many synergies around being part of a team. And what shaped my philosophy is 1 + 1 is 3 or more.
Yep.
And getting that magic at the seams of any given Sunday, something could happen. And I think that's where it really all started for me.
Yeah, when you mentioned the magic at the seams and you talked about before about winning and losing and how that shaped you, because for a lot of people, they just want to win. They just always want to win. But how important is that shaping of you as a leader by winning and losing? How has that helped you?
Yeah. They say that things that shape us, it's not always the good, but it's usually how we persevere through the challenges. And
Right.
so as you look at losing, it's, gosh, okay, we failed. What happened? Did we prepare enough? Did we have the right combination of people on the field at the time? Did we get out trained or outpaced by things? Were we surprised? And the great thing is you can go back at a halftime in the locker room and you can regroup. You can have those conversations at the end of the game and fuel yourself into what can you change? Because sports is a transformational thing for everyone all the time. Even the great athletes in the world and the Olympic athletes, they're always looking to achieve or do more. And I think anyone can get better from where they're at. And so I think
Yeah.
the good and the bad teach us things.
Yeah, and I think it's really important what you just said about halftime, which is great because you can actually regroup and then see where you're at and adjust. And then the other one was at the end of the actual game. I'm not sure. I know a lot of organizations do it and some leaders do it, but I don't know if enough leaders do a debrief, if I can put it that way, a way to sit down and do that. What's your thoughts about the importance of them actually doing that and what should they be doing around that?
Yeah. Anytime I've either conducted or been part of postmortem kind of discussions or things, it's a hugely valuable place to be. First, you want to create an environment where failure and trying things is okay, because obviously people don't want to hide. You don't want people and teams hiding behind the green dashboard, but did we have hard enough goals to begin with to stretch ourselves? But also just the space to create the conversation. So whether it's something bigger and more formal, sometimes on a cadence or a frequency, that's useful, but also even one-on-one. I like to do micro moment coaching. So, you finish a moment, you finish a meeting or you finish a presentation, or one of my team members finishes a big pitch, capturing right then and there about what worked and what maybe didn't work, or what I should give them feedback on right away, always feels more relevant than waiting till the mid-year review or the annual review. Because number one, nobody likes surprises and they may have forgotten, but also if it's genuine and authentic and in the moment, it's when everyone's real in the time, right? To learn and both receive the positive and or the constructive criticism.
Yeah, and I like what you're saying about it being genuine and authentic, because I think that is really important. And in the moment, making it relevant. You're so right, because how many times we've seen whereby there's been performance management, good luck, see you in a year's time, and they go back in a year's time and people get these surprises. It's just silly. And so I think you're right there in the moment. That's the best time to hit the iron where it's hot, get people to learn, great debrief and some learnings for people. So then they can improve for the next one, which is coming up, could be coming up next, which is good. Some good things there, right? And the micro moment coaching, I like that terminology. Yeah, very good.
It is great to be with you. I am as passionate about leadership as you are, Dennis. And so thank you so much for having me on.
It's a real pleasure. Look, I've given that introduction about you. Is there anything else about your background that you might want to tell us?
Most people are shocked to find out that I grew up in an extremely poor family. We were on welfare. We were in government housing in a small community in Northern California. I never met my dad. My mom was an alcoholic who would go to the bars and come home with a different guy every night. And I didn't ever think we had it bad. That was just my reality. Where we lived in the community, there were no rich people. And that was just how life was. As a result of that, when I started getting some of these opportunities, I've been grateful right from the very beginning. And now it's a privilege to start giving those opportunities to other people who came out of rough backgrounds. And I love doing it.
Yeah, fantastic. And to see what you've done as well around the podcast that you have, 700 episodes, that whole journey of doing that has been fantastic. And would you say that you've done that by yourself, or have you had a team around you? How have you got to 700 episodes?
Yeah, I appreciate that. What a great question. I tried to do it by myself for about a year, but I always found excuses or other things. I certainly had enough money to buy what I needed to buy. So I thought, if I buy one more course, if I do one more thing, and I just was putting it off. Finally, I started hiring with a virtual assistant, and we've built our team out from there. In my various businesses, just the personal businesses, I have about 30 employees now, and they crush it, and they keep me accountable every day.
It's interesting how we can buy as many courses, we can go to as many workshops, we can do as many things as we like, but if we don't put it into action, execution, and get on with it, it's never going to happen. And that's just a prime example.
Yeah, it's so true. We teach that to others, but I think the reason we're so passionate about it is because we've failed there in our own past, and that allows us to catapult forward now.
Excellent. So how did you get into leadership?
Yeah, great question, especially with my background. I think that it was probably with sports in the beginning. So I had that rough background, but I was always a fairly athletic kid and smart. I didn't have to study as hard to get good grades. And so that gave me extra time to go to all the practices. And I had some really good coaches, some people who would kick my rear for me, wouldn't let me get away with anything. And they cared about me growing as a young man, not just about being a good athlete that would help the team in some way. And seeing their leadership, I thought, oh my goodness, I think there was this heart cry for me of, man, whoever their kids are, the luckiest person in the world to have a dad or someone like that who would put some boundaries out there and care for them. But I saw good leadership even from my high school coaches, and I thought, I want to be more like that.
Yeah, excellent. And even if you think about your background as well, you're saying about you didn't get to know your dad and so forth, and then seeing kids like that. But I think where I see all of that is the fact that we have some role models in front of us and other ones that really set us up for things. And that could be the role models from a positive perspective, but also from a negative perspective. And those experiences actually help us set up for things as well. Talking about role models, who's your favorite leader? Now, this person could be alive or from history. So who's your favorite leader and why?
If I went for all time, then 100% sure it is Jesus. I know that he's the greatest leader of all time. And I think that was because he didn't judge people, but he still loved them enough to tell them the truth. So here we have this guy who never ventured more than 100 miles from his hometown. There was no social media. He changed the globe more than anyone else ever have. And that those two foundations of love and truth are very powerful. And that's why those are the two foundations of my executive coaching business today. Will I love them enough to say something? And as a result of that, you say, what year is it? 2021. Based on what? That goes back in history to this guy who lived in the Middle East, who cared about people and would tell them the truth, and it changed the world. So that's in history, probably modern day. Lots that I could name, two that come to mind right off. Jamie Dimon, the head of Chase Banks. I really like him, and you don't hear him mentioned much, but he's a guy who came out and said, hey, Bitcoin's a fraud, don't go there. And then all of a sudden, a year later, I was 100% wrong. Here's why. We are going to start embracing this, and this was my mistake, and I held us back from doing better sooner. He was also very transparent and forthcoming about some medical conditions he had. And so I love that kind of transparency, vulnerability. I think we need more of that in our leadership. And again, I can name a lot. One of those, one of my business partners, a guy named Hans Struzina. And Hans was a U.S. Olympic athlete, so top of his game, right? In the last Olympics, he was rowing for the United States, favorite to win the gold medal, goes to Brazil, and he comes in fourth place and misses a medal. Huge personal failure. And so he comes back. You know what he's done is he has said, man, that hurt so bad. What did I learn about myself and what have I learned about others? And how can I help people to shift their mindset when they go through failure? And I just think this guy is such a stud. I love the dude. And so people like that are all over. If you'll open your eyes and look for them, you have heroes all over. And I enjoy just being part of their lives when I have that opportunity.
Yeah, what an awesome, it must have been very, very hard for him. But what an awesome platform to learn, to move on and learn from our failures, to come back stronger, to come back a more effective leader, and just to move that mindset shift is amazing. Tell me more. Is there anything else that you want to share about your background?
I guess I've been really lucky that I've had, two stages to my working career. So there's what I would call the pre-university phase, and then there's the post-university phase. So where I grew up in Invercargill and Southland, going to university for my family was probably a step or a reach that was, not necessarily achievable. And so I ended up working in a factory in a wool scour in a carpet yarn, and I trained a textile dye, and I did that for nearly 10 years before I went to university. So post-university, I've been really lucky, and I've had some fabulous roles. I've met some amazing people, and I've had some life experiences that money can't buy in some respects.
Yeah, cool. And what did you study in university?
My first degree was in a BCom in marketing, and how that happened was that at the time when I was working for a company called Bonds Hosiery, I was the dye house supervisor. So I was 22 years old, thereabouts, and managing a team of people. And I was the youngest by far. And I used to have quite a bit of interaction with the marketing team, because essentially I would take their particular views on the color of the hosiery and bring it to life. And so I thought, gee, that marketing stuff looks quite cool. How do you do that? And so I had some conversations with one of the marketing team there, the brand manager, and that really set things alight for me. And then also at the time, Bonds started a graduate program, and I got interested in talking to some of them, and I realized that the opportunities that they were going to get versus the opportunities that I would get, because I didn't have that degree, were quite significant. So I was only ever going to progress. I was smart and hardworking, but I was only ever going to progress if my boss liked me. Or I impressed somebody. Whereas if I potentially had a degree, I could, in my own mind, I thought I'd have more control, more levers, and I could make the decisions that I wanted to make accordingly.
Good. Oh, it's great to hear. And tell me something. So how did you get actually into leadership yourself?
It came on me at a young age, I think. So when I left school, I was 17 years old, and I was being trained to be the dye house supervisor, a trainee cadet. And I got collared by the shift supervisor, foreman. His name was Ewan Tilson. and I've never forgotten him, ever. He was a fairly hard character. Tattoos when they weren't cool, which signified that you were a hard man. He had one eye. He would be, I would say, late 30s, early 40s. He was a smart guy that hadn't probably had the opportunities because of his background. And he collared me at 17 and pulled me aside and said, "You're going to be the boss here one day. So what you need to remember is to treat everybody with the same respect that you want to be treated yourself." Now, that's a cliche, but when you got you and Tilson, one eye, covered in tats, a hard man looking at you hard, I thought, I better listen to this. And so at that time, I ended up running a night shift, and it was a bit of a gamble for the business at that time. They had a big production order in, and they couldn't meet demands. And so I ended up running the night shift for a couple of weeks and led a group of guys and had to teach them everything in that area who had never actually been in that area. And we ended up over-delivering all expectations. And it was simply because my leadership method was I set the example through doing. And so I worked hard and kept everything focused, and they all just followed. And so it started really young. And then when I left home in Invercargill and I went to Wellington with Bonds Hosiery, I was 19. And I suddenly found myself as the shift supervisor managing a group of people that were at least 10 years older than I. Again, it was very much a style of leading by doing and trying to create a team where we actually all supported each other. So I wasn't afraid of getting my hands dirty, in other words. And I learned those sort of on the ground, on the floor aspects really early. So that's when it started.
Yeah, wow. And tell me, because I think today you also with multiple generations working in the workforce today, a lot of the younger ones are coming through as managers and leaders today. What was it like for you to have people who were older working for you? How was the transition for you, and how was it for them as well?
Initially, I was a little bit daunted by it. I thought, God, I'm 19. I'm from Invercargill. I've never been out of town. It's my first time on a plane. And here I was in the capital city with these people that had lived a completely different life to me and in an environment that was completely foreign. So it was hard, and it challenged me on quite a number of levels. When I think back about it, I guess I didn't dwell on it too much. I just got on and did things. And it was multicultural and society in there, big Pacifica, big Māori, a lot of Southeast Asian people. So it was a real blending pot, whereas I'd come from a very monocultural background in Invercargill and Southland. So dealing with all that stuff was quite interesting. And I guess my style is one of collaboration, and I think it started there. It wasn't me, the boss, the big white chief going, "Now you need to do that. And when you've done that, come and see me." It was like, we've got to do this. Let's go and do this. And this is how I think we should attack it. And so as a consequence, the teams that I led on that particular shift at that time, we became quite high performing in our own way.
Yeah.
But I didn't have the science behind what was going on. I just was very granular.
Yeah. And what you've said a few times already is that you just got on with it, right? And you were on the floor with the people, rolling your sleeves up, getting on with it with them, rather than sitting in the office and pointing fingers, if I can put it that way, as an analogy. So it's a bit different.
Yeah, exactly right, Dennis. And there was a little bit of that from that current supervisor who ran that department. There was a little bit of remoteness there, whereas I wasn't cut from that cloth. I was very much like my dad. You just get in there, lead by doing, hands-on. And as a consequence of that, people learned to trust that if I said I was going to do something or we were going to commit to something, we did it. So it went from there. But it wasn't without its ups and downs, managing various egos and some of the conversations I ended up having at 19 with some people that were in their early 30s about sex education stuff. It was bizarre because they hadn't had an education as such on some of the stuff. So they'd be coming to me and ask me, and I'm going,
Amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. But I never judged them because that was, my background was working class, and mum and dad worked hard, and dad had his own business. My mum worked in a shop and worked in the hospital as a cleaner. Dad had his own electrical business, left school at 15 to start work. That was it. As I said before, that whole notion of, I'd like to go to university, it wasn't a conversation that we had. It was just, got to get a job, son. Okay, cool. Don't know what I want to do, but this,
Yeah, and I also think sounds like also even at the age of 19, you built trust and rapport with those individuals, and so they felt safe, well, they felt good to be able to come and have a conversation with you, which is pretty good.
Yeah, I think so. And I remember there was one particular person who she was Samoan. She managed, it was just the two of her, and she managed a particular area and that fell under my realm that was absolutely critical in terms of getting the detail right and the information right. And she was known to be a hothead. She could be incredibly temperamental and fly off the handle. So I spent a lot of time building a relationship with her to the point that I was the one that if there was ever a firework cracker went off, I was the one sent in to try and deal with it. But it didn't happen that often once I'd come around because I just gave her the courtesy of time. I think just listening, it's a really powerful thing. And I didn't even know I was doing it at that age, but that's essentially what I was doing. I'd go in and listen.
I feel, and I think today, if you look at the leadership of the world today and what's happening around the world, people are wanting that right now more than ever. And so even think about it those days, you're a pioneer in what you did there, right? And what's been happening today, people want to be heard.
That's exactly right. And I was having this exact conversation with a colleague yesterday, and the notion of soft skills, the leadership soft skills. I'm going, can you remember hearing that over the last decade or so? To me, they've always been hard skills. That's where the metal hits the road, to be fair, because you can have all the technical skills in the world and degrees and all the rest of it. But if you can't actually work with people, you can't actually bring them along, you can't actually create a culture and a team and all those things, which have traditionally been seen as soft, therefore not important, I think you're doomed to fail. And if you look at all the great leaders through history, and even now, look at in our own country with Jacinda and other people like that's that ability to engage and create a culture where people are listened and trusted and all that sort of stuff is really powerful, in my opinion.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Leadership is Changing with your host, Dennis Giannoutsis. Each week, we and our guests provide information and insights through exploring leading change, inspiring executives and leaders to adapt and lead a bigger game in a fast-moving world.